everyone. Thank you for being here. First, let me see. There we go. Yes. I just want to acknowledge how great it is to be in a brand new theater in New York City. Yes. A theater dedicated to nonfiction filmmaking, to truth-telling. My name is Thomas Lafley. I'm a film critic and a New York Film Critics Circle member. And I'm joined by co-directors Kathleen Hughes and Abigail Disney. I'm going to start us off with a few questions and then we'll turn it over to you guys. I'm sure you have a lot of questions as well. I feel like I'm so far back.
Yeah.
You just pull this out.
Before we do questions, can I do some takes?
Please.
We have a bunch of people in this audience, and I hate when I have a list, but there are a bunch of people here, and I don't want to forget anybody. So Ira Blanchard, are you here? Ira? There you are. Horrible. Feedback situation here. Feedback. There you are. Ira Blanchard. Please stand up. Ira is one of our editors and indispensable part of this process. Thank you so much. Jess Gonzalez. Jess, thank you. One of our producers on animation, and just the animation was brilliant. We're so grateful. Kat, thank you. Kat Vecchio, stand up, please. Kat Vecchio, many years with us at Court Films, and one of the producers on this film. I'm so grateful to her. Also, we have Kat Guns. You're gonna have to stand up on behalf of your mom. Kat Guns, daughter of Agnes Guns, who isn't here tonight, but one of our co-producers. Ann Delaney. Anne, where are you, my love, darling? Not only one of our producers, but also contributed to our Impact campaign. Callie Curry, are you here? The artist Swoon, who is the person responsible for my beautiful ring. It's rare to find a producer who doesn't want to know more about my ring. There's some more folks. Have I forgotten anybody? Raise your hand if I forgot you. There's all kinds of people here who are beloved friends who go way back in history with me, and I just want to thank all of you, Gretchen Buckenholz, Peter and Leah, Doyle Coleman, my son Eamon, and Henry Hauser, my husband Pierre Hauser, who are here. Just so many thank yous for your patience, Debbie and Brian House. You guys are so kind to me, and I'm just forever grateful for your love. So I'll let that go. You haven't caught anything?
You can see what my job is.
She's the catcher of egregious errors.
It looks great. Lisa Holton is here.
Lisa Holton. Yes. Oh my God, Aideen Kane.
Who's that?
Aideen Kane. Wave your hand back there, Aideen. Aideen Kane is one of our producers, and also just like, she's like the steel trap. Nothing gets past Aideen. And then Angie Wang. Holy crap. Holy crap is the only appropriate way to describe Angie Wang. She is the essence of holy crap, and she remembers everything and knows everything, and I'm just, Angie, what will I do without you? Like, would. That was the conditional future tense, just so you know. Don't go anywhere, I will die. So anyway, I'll let that go. Okay,
We're good.
so it was sloppy, but I did it. It was great.
And if you have been left out, it doesn't mean we don't love you.
Yes. Yes.
And I do love your ring.
Oh, okay.
So I want to start with you, Abby. You're obviously not new to tackling topics of social justice in your work as an activist, as a filmmaker. But going after this topic, which involves your family and you intertwine it with the American history, both economic injustice, racial injustice, I'm wondering if you were toying with this idea at all before you got a message like that on Facebook.
That's such a good question. I have toyed with the idea of what was being asked of me in life, just cosmically, by having this name and living the life I've been living around social justice since my 20s, and it did feel for many, many years that I couldn't just keep talking about justice for women and justice for people of color and the rights that workers have. Barbara Ehrenreich recently died, and she was a massive influence on me with her book Nickel and Dimed. So I've cared about all these issues for so long. And I did what I think most Americans do for many years, which is to know that there was a problem, but not fully let myself know it and see it or acknowledge it until Ralph reached out to me. And when he reached out to me, he made contact at a personal level. And once that contact had been made, like in my nature, I can't just kind of move on and pretend I didn't hear that, didn't see that. And once the contact had been made, I had to keep following the questions as they presented themselves to me.
And the question for both of you, a lot of us don't think about the casting process usually in documentary filmmaking, but there is very much a casting process.
There was no couch, just so you know.
And can I say it was a really brave thing of Abby to do, just
Indeed.
to take this leap into this process. You know, it wasn't an easy thing. So
Thank you,
before we get on to the casting.
So I am wondering, of course, Ralph was one of the subject, but how did you decide between the two of you, the rest of the subjects, that they belonged in the film and they had a voice in the story that you wanted to tell?
Well, they almost presented themselves. You know, Ellie, you see in that circle of workers when Ellie says, "I work for the mouse and the dog." She just had a light. She just had an energy about her, and when it was over, we kept talking to her, and she really felt strongly about being a part of this. There were a lot of people we approached who informed us, who were really helpful with helping. They helped us understand what was going on, but they were reticent to put themselves forward. So some of it was a process of elimination. Some of it was a process of just understanding. We needed sort of a little bit of a variety of stories, and this is kind of how it landed.
And how did you gain their trust? Because we see them being really incredibly honest on camera, they're vulnerable on camera, they're just really putting a lot of themselves on camera. It's a big, brave act,
Yes.
definitely on your end and on their end. I'm just wondering how you established that between the people you were interviewing.
I think we spent some time with them, and I mean, the Disney was a little bit intimidating, to be honest, because there was, at the very beginning, there was a fear that maybe she was actually an agent of the company or something, because, I mean, her name, as she has said, really does carry so much weight. Not only with the workers at Disneyland. I mean, I've been with Abby when she shows her driver's license at, Avis, and people are like, "Oh my God, I am not worthy," and I'm looking at her like,
But and yet she knows me.
But I mean, it's I've learned. I've really come to understand what it means to be a Disney in that sense. So it took a while for the workers to understand that really Abby was genuinely
Merely mortal.
but more than that, that you really cared about what was going on, and you were not somehow, secretly about trying to get them fired or anything.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, like, because there's so much weight in that stupid name, it doesn't take much work to deflate it. All you have to do is just be nice, and it's amazing how surprising that is to people.
And you're in the film, you put yourself in front of a camera. I'm wondering what that decision was like for you, deciding to not to be behind the camera, but a part of the story as well, which you are a part of the story, of course.
That was really hard, and honestly, I was back and forth, because if I put myself in front of the camera, I knew that there would be, like, the advantage of the press would be more interested, right? Because here I am criticizing my own family, and that's clearly paid off. But I also knew that there'd be a certain amount of, like, look at her calling attention to herself, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So I knew that there would be that, and I would expose myself to that kind of criticism. But there was a higher purpose here. And it was really calling attention to what was happening with workers there and around the country, not just at Disney. And it felt like I needed to take that risk. I will say that if you watch it again, maybe the director's cut will call attention to all of the different hairstyles and colors, because I wasn't exactly putting myself in the front of the camera in the vain way. Otherwise, it would be an entirely different film.
There was some arm twisting to get Abby to really, I mean, you understood theoretically that it was really important for Disney to be criticizing Disney, and that in order to talk about this whole issue of income inequality and the big story that's been happening in this country for 40, 50 years, you knew that people would pay attention if you put yourself in there. But it was a bit of a struggle to make you really get in there too, because it's a scary thing to do.
And it is a really complex film because it kind of unfolds over real time, and as you're filming, the story is evolving and you're capturing something, and then the COVID happens. I'm wondering, as co-directors, how do you keep a sense of control when you're making a film like that? How do you know that, okay, this is the story, we found it?
You're hilarious. Control. No, go ahead, Kath.
Oh, I
make us look professional now.
Oh, we were in control the entire time. Trust me. No, we were following the story, so to speak, and and at some point it became, at some point we understood that we could hire. No one wanted to get on an airplane, but there were all kinds of talented people out there in California who could put on masks and go and do some filming on our behalf, and that really helped.
Yeah, and also it's verite filmmaking. You just don't know when you start what it's going to look like when you're done.
And I love how you weave different angles together. I know your editor is here, so maybe talk a little bit about working together, because it's a really complex look at capitalism. You're looking at the family's legacy, you're looking at American history, and this process that is called the assolification of America, which I really loved. You're kind of attacking it from various different angles with archival footage and animation. So putting that all together, just talk about that editing process.
It's such a good question. And David, are you here?
David.
Our editor's not here, but he'll be at the party afterwards. So all of you just swarm him and tell him how wonderful he is, because he really did do a remarkable thing around that braid. It's so hard to know when to stop this and start that, and then take that and go over here, and that's the braid is not just conceptual, and it's not just in terms of your people, but it's music and it's pacing and it's feel. It takes an enormous amount of talent, and David is an incredibly gifted editor, and we're so grateful to him. He was an equal partner in a three-way thinking process that was sometimes too intense. I will tell you that there was a day when I kind of lost my mind, and we sent out for some CBD, and it turned out to be THC, and that was interesting. So it wasn't all smooth sailing, but it was hilarious though. You form this incredible ship in the tossing seas, and you figure it out together.
And editing, I think it's a craft, and it's an incredible, and Ira in the back of the room was our assistant editor, additional editor, and contributed to the process. And it's, even though I think that these days in the community of documentary filmmakers, a lot of editors are talking about wanting more credit, and they really deserve it, because what they contribute is really sometimes hard to measure. It really is about what you see on the screen sometimes. So he was great, but it was a long and arduous and painful process to get to kind of squeeze everything down into what we have there on the screen now.
And I really loved your use of animation as well. Sometimes it kind of amplifies the truth, and other times it brings a dose of sense of humor, an ironic sense of humor. So maybe talk about that. It seems really apt to use animation in a film about Disney.
Some of my best memories of growing up were of meeting animators and watching them work and watching my father work with them. Truly, they are remarkable people, and I love them so much. They're weird and they're wonderful, and so when we decided we wanted animation, we talked to a bunch of different people, and about half of them said, "Thank you very much, but we would like to have careers someday," and like pissing Disney off seems like a bad idea. The company is called Awesome and Modest, and Sean Donnelly will be at the party. He's the main animator. We also have our producer here as well. They were awesome and they were modest, and it was super fun. It was everything I saw my father do with storyboarding and talking about like gags and stuff like this. I have some tape of this. My grandfather and my father used to love to record reel-to-reel audio, and there was a night when Walt came home. My grandfather lived and my father lived closer to the studio than he and his kids did, and he came home after a long story meeting, and you have this audio of my father as this like 5, 6, 7-year-old boy, and Walt is describing a series of sight gags that he's working through for a film that he's working on, and like judging how he's going to go forward based on how this 7-year-old laughs. I mean, that's how it works. You work it through one thing at a time. So like I said to Sean, top hats, we're going to use top hats. And he went with it, and it was so fun. I loved working with animation. There was just no question it would be vital. And animation gives you the capacity to talk about things that happen in the abstract in a really concrete way. So that was really important. So the bootstraps is a great example of how you can really blow something up.
Exactly. And if I can say, it was really the person who worked really hard on finding, kind of narrowing down our animator was Aideen Kane. She just did a big search, and that was kind of a whole other role in this film, and filmmaking in general, is the producer who goes out and does all of this kind of work that you don't think about too often. But the reason we found Sean and Jess, who's here, was Aideen. So it's one of the thousands of things she did for us. So I just thought I'd shout out to her while she was here, especially since we almost forgot her in the beginning.
Before we turn it to the audience, I want to ask, in telling this story and researching it, was there something that was particularly surprising to you that you found out? In watching it, obviously it was eye-opening for me in many ways, but the parking lot bit that I've heard, I just couldn't believe. I'm wondering if there were moments like that where you felt startled.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that whole story about the parking lot and the $1 billion in subsidies that Disney managed to pull out of this one small city of Anaheim was shocking. I mean, I think both Abigail and I know that this is the way corporations work. They go into state government, they lobby, they throw their money around, and get what they want. But the amount was stunning. And when you think about what $1 billion could do in a place like Anaheim, emergency services and schools and libraries and parks and all the things that the money didn't go into, it really is depressing and shocking. And
and I would just say there's one part of Anaheim where the streets have still not been repaved since before the park opened in 1955. I was horrified to find that out.
Let's take a couple of questions from the audience. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us about your film. I'll try to, okay. Just wanted to thank you for being here and answering our questions. These are real people's lives, and I'm very moved by all the stories as an underpaid and overworked person too. I kept asking myself though, animation, why not use Disney style to subvert it? I was wondering, was it a licensing issue or an intentional sort of, you don't want to call attention to it?
I have a quick and obvious answer for you.
Money.
That's fair.
At the time my father passed away, it was $1 million a minute for Disney style animation, whether it was digital or whether it was hand drawn. So,
Wow.
yeah, money. But which is not to say that I didn't thoroughly want what we got. I would love to subvert Disney animation, but I like to subvert it with something subversive.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, and that kind of Monty Python-esque feel felt just exactly right to me.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You right here. And you can speak loudly, I'll repeat the question.
You've created a film about fantasy and reality, where fantasy realities. I've noticed that you have made a costume choice of wearing ruby red slippers. And I couldn't help but see that you've really embodied that so powerfully. I just wanted to congratulate you on both aspects.
Thank you for noticing, and there is no place like home.
Just to repeat, this viewer had an observation about costuming choice of ruby slippers in a film about both fantasy and reality, more
They're
common.
delicious. I got them in sale in Neiman Marcus about 6 years ago, but anyway.
Love that.
Oh,
Yes, please.
I was, well, thank you. I was thinking about that last image at the end of the film of the school of fish devouring the castle. In your estimation, when will you think that such a thing will happen? I mean, we're having it slightly, but
Yeah.
will such a thing as another revolution, in your estimation, ever happen?
Well, revolutions are tough, right? Generally, it's the people who are most unhappy who instigate the revolution who suffer the most from it. I don't hope for a revolution in this country. The reference really was to an old labor image that you see in labor literature all the time, of that giant bunch of fish swallowing the big fish. And so it was mainly meant to say that you can't continue indefinitely in this manner, that people will rise up against you. And my belief is that we can change the way in which capitalism functions, or we'll lose capitalism altogether. And so those people who call me a socialist really ought to be thanking me for reasserting that there's a way for capitalism to be better. And, my grandfather and my granduncle did something really important. And there's language for it now, but there wasn't then. And it was a social enterprise. What the neoliberals and the Clinton Global Initiative everybody calls a social enterprise. They started a business that was meant to be better than just simply a business. And Yves Chouinard, who just, made this dramatic move around Patagonia, tried to structure it in such a way that he wouldn't have to surrender it to the business people. Because the business people were just going to turn it into another business. They would never understand that, Earth is the shareholder. So we need to rescue business from business people, because it is the place where the vast majority of Americans spend the vast majority of their time. And so if you want to make life better for Americans, you fix American business. And, I've been making the rounds in the press, CNBC, and lots of business reporters. It's astonishing to me how hard it is for them to grasp what it is that I'm trying to say, which is you could do better just by moving people to the center of what you're doing. Like, everything would change about the way you make your decisions if people were at the center of your decisions. So I don't know if there's going to be a revolution. I think we should hope there won't be, much as I feel that the situation we're in is desperate and bad. Because I think revolutions are violent and destructive and tend to leave people worse than they were before. But I do want a cataclysmic change. I do want to see a dramatic re-understanding of how things should really work.
Let's take a couple more. Over there.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's powerful. My name is Kennedy. Oh, okay.
And Kennedy, just because I love you, slower. He speaks really fast, and I'm like half the time.
I'm from Kenya, so I'm a guest. Honestly, this is global challenge and inequality everywhere. So I have two questions. One, will there be a movement that, because as you know, Disney is even in Kibera slum where I grew up, you see Disney pictures. So it is really represent American corporate world, right? So my question is that, do you think by having this thing come out, and I've seen you, Abby, in televisions, is there a movement of other companies trying to figure out and change? And then the last question again is, do you have examples of other entity or corporations that are really going towards and believing that not just peeing, but really sharing the growth with the workers? Thank you.
Those are excellent.
Thank you, Kennedy. That's a great question. And you should know Kennedy Odede runs an extraordinary organization called Shining Hope for Communities in Kenya. And he's really, as far as I'm concerned, the voice of urban poverty for the 21st century. He really is an extraordinary visionary. Yes, there is a movement. The B Corp movement is, for me, one of the most promising bits of organizing and activism around the changing of the business culture that you can imagine. And the people who run it are some of the most inspiring, extraordinary, articulate people you'll ever meet. So if you want to be a B corporation, you have to agree to a series of changes to your business around transparency, around putting people first, around the environment and so forth, all the things that we worry about, around short-term investing as opposed to long-term investing, and on and on and on. And it's a high bar you have to pass to become officially a B Corp, and you have to pass it every single year from that time forward. And there are over 5,000 corporations who are currently B Corps. They're in 77 countries. They employ over 1 million people around the world. I think Disney should become the largest B Corp in the world. It's an insane thing to say. And I'm willing to just go ahead and throw myself at that, because I think it would be an amazing thing. Because if Disney were to do such a thing, who knows how they would follow. There are corporations in Europe. Paul Pullman, whom I'm sure you've met in your travels, was the CEO of Unilever. And when he became CEO of Unilever, he did an extraordinary thing. The first thing he did was he said, I am not making quarterly reports ever again. Just not. And Wall Street said, oh, bad, Paul Pullman, and they punished the stock. But the company kept producing profits, and so eventually Wall Street kind of got okay with it. And so in not reporting, that seems like such a small thing, but in not reporting quarterly, he suddenly could choose differently for the company going forward in terms of hiring and firing and how he wanted things to go. He suddenly became a long-term CEO, which goes with being a long-term investor. There are incredibly promising, profound people who are writing and thinking about this every single day. And the thing is, like, it's a complex system that constrains us all, right? And we all have a choice every day when we get out of bed, whether we want to be a part of this system or whether we want to be a part of changing this system. And it is a very tall order to say to people who are enmeshed in the system that they should behave differently within it. I understand my position of extraordinary privilege in saying that. But what if everybody decided to behave differently? It would be what if every CEO said, no, I don't care what you've got to say about it. If I can't hire a person for a living wage, I can't afford to hire a worker. How would things change?
I love the quote you started the movie with, "We are each other's business." Even that as a starting point would be
Yes.
a huge step.
Yes.
I think we have time for one final question. Yes, over there.
Hang on one sec. You're not gonna tell me you said that.
Hey, so for the editing process, is there a moment where that you remember that you guys were stuck? And then how do you, maybe just one, but how do you figure out a path between you as co-directors with the editor, and let us know.
You wanna do that one?
I can't decide which moment to talk about. It's part of the process of making a documentary, or I imagine, a nonfiction film too. I mean, you really have to just work your way through, and sometimes, we showed a rough cut to a bunch of people one day, and we thought we were,
Yeah, we had nailed it.
yeah, and then like even
Like,
watching,
no.
but people had really, their reactions made us go, oh, of course, this doesn't make sense, and we went back to the drawing board. So it's a constant going back to the drawing board. I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, but that's sort of how it works.
You like, it's such a wild thing to balance telling a story with making an argument.
Yes.
And you don't want to just be about the argument. And the story can't just be serving the argument. It has to actually be a human story with real people. And that's the most important piece of this, right? So we got stuck over and over and over again. Really stuck was sort of the central defining condition we were in. And every time we got stuck, we either went away from it for a minute and then came back and saw it differently, or we had somebody come in and see it differently from us. It's just like you have to be renewing your sense of the film again and again and again. I can't tell you how many times I realized something that I had been wildly missing, even though I thought I understood this film through and through the day we started.
Yes.
I think this is all the time we have. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks to our guests, Abigail. Thank you so much for being here and for your really wonderful, brave documentary.